China's aggressive expansionism is no secret. Today, the world knows all about Beijing's tactics, how China has its eyes on foreign land, and how it has time and again tried to invade territories. When India started ramping up its border infrastructure along Ladakh, China provoked India. It moved more troops along the line of actual control. It set up tents. After several rounds of talks and false promises from Beijing, Chinese troops clashed with India in Galwan. 20 Indian soldiers were killed in action. China suffered more damage, lost more soldiers, but never disclosed the figure. This was in June. 6 months later, it turns out China had planned all of it. In other words, it had planned the Galwan clash. A lot has already been said on these lines. A US report has now weighed in on this. The report was submitted by the US-China Economic and Security Review Commission. It says China had planned the Galwan clash and had even gone to the extent of factoring in the fatalities. The report goes on to expose China's aggressive campaign around the world. We will tell you all about it over the next few minutes. Let me start off by quoting a line from this report. It says, some evidence suggested the Chinese government had planned the incident, potentially including the possibility for fatalities. The report expands on the possible indicators. Number one, the report points out that several weeks prior to the clash, Chinese Defense Minister Wei Fenghe made a statement encouraging Beijing to quote-unquote use fighting to promote stability. Number two, it talks about a particular editorial published in the Chinese mouthpiece, the Global Times. The US report says that 2 weeks before the incident, an editorial in China's state-owned Global Times warned that India would suffer a quote-unquote devastating blow to its trade and economic ties. This, the report says, was a potential indication of Chinese leaders signaling their intent to escalate tensions. Number three, the report says satellite images depicted a large Chinese buildup in the Galwan Valley, including potentially 1,000 PLA soldiers weeks before the deadly skirmish. The US report describes the standoff as, quote-unquote, the most severe border crisis in decades. It also focuses on Chinese action in Hong Kong, Beijing's actions against Taiwan, and its strategic aims in Africa. The report says China is indifferent to its reputation abroad. I will not comment on that analysis, but here's what I would like to say. Even if China is indifferent to its reputation abroad, it must know that it is China and China alone that would have to face the consequences of its aggressive policies. Be it India's digital strike that has cost Chinese companies millions of dollars in revenue, or the shutting out of Huawei from several international markets. Let me tell you a little bit more about the US body that submitted this report. The US-China Economic and Security Review Commission came into being in the year 2000. Its job is to monitor and submit an annual report on national security implications of trade and economic ties between Washington and Beijing. Its observations this year are in line with what we have been telling you for months now. The proximate cause of the clash appeared to be India's construction of a strategic access road to support troops stationed along the line of actual control. This is something that China will never admit to. China used India's ramping up of infrastructure as an excuse to provoke New Delhi. How else do you explain why Beijing is offended over construction on Indian soil? Beijing has been ramping up its infrastructure for years. India never questioned it because New Delhi respects international laws. As for Beijing, it is always on the lookout for an opportunity to display its aggression.